Think you know everything about Kenan Kel? Think again. From Kel's orange soda obsession being completely improvised to missing episodes banned for bizarre reasons, and from a future SNL star almost being added as a third main character to the shocking truth about what Kel actually drank on set, these 15 jaw-dropping secrets will completely change how you remember this beloved 90s Nickelodeon classic. Fact 1. Kel Mitchell secretly never drank orange soda. Here's something that will completely blow your mind about one of Nickelodeon's most iconic characters. Kel Mitchell, the actor who made Who Loves Orange Soda? Kel loves orange soda. One of the most memorable catchphrases in 1990s television history, has a shocking secret that fans are only now discovering. Despite spending 4 seasons guzzling orange soda on camera and making it the cornerstone of his character's entire personality, Kel Mitchell has never actually consumed carbonated drinks in his real life. This revelation came to light during interviews where Mitchell openly discussed his actual drinking preferences, admitting that he completely avoids all carbonated beverages. The irony is almost too perfect to believe, considering that Kel Kimball's orange soda obsession became so legendary that fans still approach Mitchell decades later expecting him to order orange soda at drive-thrus. In fact, Mitchell has mentioned that he and his wife can't even go through fast food drive-thrus without people questioning his beverage choices, with fans getting genuinely upset when he orders anything other than orange soda. So what was Mitchell actually drinking during all those countless scenes where Kel chugged orange soda straight from the bottle? The production team had to get creative with substitutes that looked authentic on camera, but didn't contain the carbonation that Mitchell couldn't tolerate. This meant that every single one of those enthusiastic orange soda moments that defined the character was essentially a carefully crafted performance, with Mitchell acting out pure joy and excitement for a beverage he would never choose to drink in reality. The dedication Mitchell showed to selling this performance is remarkable when you consider how central orange soda was to the show's comedy and his character development. Episode after episode, he convinced millions of viewers that Kel Kimball's love for orange soda was genuine and heartfelt, all while personally avoiding the very thing that made his character famous. It's a testament to Mitchell's acting abilities that this deception went unnoticed for so many years, making every "I do, ooh" moment even more impressive in hindsight. Fact 2. Kel's catchphrase was completely improvised. One of the most beloved catchphrases in Nickelodeon history actually came about through pure, spontaneous creativity, and it almost didn't happen at all. When Dan Schneider, the executive producer and showrunner for Kenan Kel, originally wrote the script for Kel's orange soda obsession, he included only the most basic line possible. The script simply had Kel saying, "I love orange soda," in a straightforward manner, without any of the musical flair or enthusiasm that would eventually make it legendary. But Kel Mitchell had other ideas when it came time to deliver that line during filming. Instead of sticking to the plain script, Mitchell decided to add his own creative spin to the moment, transforming a simple statement into something much more memorable. He began by changing the line to, "Who loves orange soda? I do," but then kept going with the improvisation, adding what he later described as a little flavor to it, a little singy-songy quality that turned the phrase into a mini musical performance. The specific addition that made all the difference was Mitchell's decision to stretch out the ending with I do, ooh, complete with the melodic rise and fall that became instantly recognizable to anyone who watched the show. This wasn't planned or rehearsed. It was simply Mitchell following his instincts as a performer and adding personality to what could have been a forgettable throwaway line about liking a particular beverage. The improvised catchphrase became so popular that it completely took over Mitchell's public persona, following him everywhere he went for decades after the show ended. Mitchell has shared stories about how fans recognize him primarily through this phrase, shouting it at him in public and expecting him to perform it on command. What started as a spontaneous creative choice during one filming session became a cultural phenomenon that defined not just his character but his entire career. The fact that such an iconic piece of 1990s television history came from pure improvisation rather than careful scriptwriting shows how sometimes the best moments in entertainment happen when actors are given the freedom to experiment and add their own personal touch to the material. Fact 3. Josh Server was almost the third star. The classic duo format of Kenan and Kel that fans know and love almost looked completely different. And it all comes down to a decision made in Nickelodeon's corporate offices that changed television history. According to revelations that Kenan Thompson shared in his memoir, he and Kel Mitchell had originally envisioned their spin-off show as a three-person comedy team rather than the iconic pair that eventually made it to air. The third person they wanted to include was their close friend and fellow All That cast member Josh Server, who had been working alongside them in the sketch comedy trenches for years. Josh Server was one of the most talented performers on All That, and actually holds the distinction of being the longest-running cast member in the show's original run, appearing in all 6 seasons of the first era. Server was known for his incredible range of characters, including Detective Dan, Earboy, and numerous other memorable personalities that showcased his comedic abilities. His friendship with Kenan and Kel extended beyond just professional collaboration, as the three had developed a natural chemistry that Thompson and Mitchell believed would translate perfectly to a sitcom format. When Kenan and Kel pitched their ideas for the show to network executives, they genuinely thought that including Server as a third main character would make the show even funnier and more dynamic. They had already proven that they could work well together as a group on All That, where they frequently appeared in sketches together and had developed an easy rapport that fans enjoyed watching. The trio felt confident that their established friendship and proven comedic timing would create something special on screen. However, Nickelodeon executives had different plans entirely. The network was focused on the two-person dynamic and didn't want to complicate the formula by adding a third main character to the mix. As a result, Server was left out of the main cast entirely, though he did eventually get to make a guest appearance in the third season episode titled Poem Sweet Poem, where he played a character named Philip. Fact 4. 6 episodes are permanently missing from streaming. If you've ever tried to watch every single episode of Kenan and Kel on streaming platforms or DVD collections, you've probably noticed that certain episodes seem to have vanished into thin air. And there's actually a fascinating legal and financial story behind these missing pieces of 1990s television history. A total of 6 episodes from the show's original run are completely absent from most official releases, creating frustrating gaps for fans who want to experience the complete series as it originally aired on Nickelodeon. The most famous missing episode is Baggin' Saggin' Kel from the first season, which featured a memorable scene where Kel makes his dramatic entrance into Rigby's grocery store while competing in a bag-off contest. The problem arose because the producers used LL Cool J's hit song Mama Said Knock You Out during this sequence, and when it came time to release the show on DVD and streaming platforms years later, Nickelodeon discovered that re-licensing this music would be extremely expensive. Rather than pay the hefty fees or go through the complicated process of editing out the song and replacing it with different music, the network simply chose to exclude the entire episode from all future releases. The other missing episodes deal with different but equally complicated legal issues involving guest star royalties and additional music licensing problems. The Chicago Witch Trials from Season 3 is missing because it featured actress Linda Cardellini in a guest role, and her representatives apparently demanded royalty payments that Nickelodeon wasn't willing to pay for home video and streaming releases. Similarly, Freezer Burned was removed due to issues with Dr. Joyce Brothers, the famous psychologist who made a guest appearance, while Who Loves Who disappeared because it featured music from singer Tamia that created licensing headaches. The remaining missing episodes, In the Line of Kenan and Safe and Sorry, both from the first season, have more mysterious reasons for their absence, since they don't appear to have obvious music or guest star issues. These episodes did air on some cable reruns, but were still excluded from the official DVD collections, suggesting there might be other behind-the-scenes legal or financial considerations that fans aren't aware of. Fact 5. The show creator was mistaken for an elderly woman. The origin story of how Kenan and Kel came to exist involves one of the most awkward and hilarious cases of mistaken identity in television history. And it all happened at what might be the most 1990s celebrity gathering imaginable. Writer and producer Kim Bass, who would go on to create the beloved Nickelodeon series, was attending a birthday party for comedian Sinbad when he found himself in an unexpectedly strange conversation that would change the course of his career. At this party, a Nickelodeon executive approached Bass with what seemed like enthusiasm about a potential collaboration, but the conversation quickly took a bizarre turn that left both men feeling confused. The executive had been actively searching for Bass to discuss the possibility of creating a spin-off show starring Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, who had become breakout stars on the sketch comedy series All That. However, when the executive finally met Bass face-to-face, he made a confession that was both embarrassing and oddly revealing about how the entertainment industry sometimes works. The Nickelodeon representative admitted to Bass that he had been looking for him for quite some time, but had completely wrong expectations about what Bass would look like when they finally met. In what must have been an incredibly awkward moment, the executive told Bass directly, "We've been looking for you. I thought you were an older white lady." This case of mistaken identity apparently stemmed from the executive's unfamiliarity with Bass's previous work and perhaps some confusion about his name or background. Bass had already established himself as a successful television writer and producer, most notably as the co-creator of the popular ABC sitcom Sister Sister, which starred twin actresses Tia and Tamara Mowry. His track record with family-friendly comedy and his ability to work with young performers made him an ideal candidate for developing a Nickelodeon show. But somehow the executive had formed a completely incorrect mental image of who Bass was as a person. Despite this awkward beginning, the meeting proved successful, and Bass agreed to move forward with the project. When he eventually met with Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell to discuss the show concept, he was immediately impressed by their natural chemistry and comedic timing, describing their interaction as so seamless that it seemed like they had rehearsed their jokes beforehand. Fact 6. Britney Spears got a disastrous makeover on set. One of the most cringe-worthy behind-the-scenes disasters in Kenan and Kel history happened during the show's special Hollywood episodes, when a young pop superstar became an unwitting victim of Kel's trademark clumsiness in what was supposed to be a simple guest appearance. Britney Spears, who was already becoming a major force in the music industry, agreed to appear in the two-part "Aw, Here It Goes to Hollywood" episodes during the show's 4th season, but her experience on set turned into something she'd probably never expected when she signed on for the Nickelodeon cameo. The Hollywood episodes featured Kenan and Kel taking a trip to California after missing their flight to an orange soda festival in Europe, leading them on various adventures around Los Angeles, where they encountered several celebrities playing themselves. During the filming of these episodes, the storyline called for Kel to interact with Britney Spears in what should have been a straightforward scene, but things went horribly wrong when Kel's character was supposed to help with her appearance in some way. According to reports from the production, Kel's scene with Spears involved some kind of styling or makeover situation that was meant to be comedic, but the joke backfired in a major way when things got out of control. During the filming, Kel accidentally ended up cutting several locks of Britney's hair, which was already a serious problem since her hairstyle was carefully maintained as part of her public image. But the disaster didn't stop there, because Kel also managed to dye her hair with green highlights during the same scene, creating a look that was definitely not what anyone had planned. This incident represents the kind of physical comedy gone wrong that could only happen on a show like Kenan and Kel, where Kel's character was known for creating chaos in even the most simple situations. The fact that a major pop star like Britney Spears ended up with an accidental haircut and unwanted green highlights during what was supposed to be a fun guest appearance shows just how unpredictable filming could be when Kel's clumsiness was involved. The scene was apparently kept in the final version of the episode, turning Spears' hair disaster into a permanent part of the show's legacy. Fact 7. Kel's orange insides were medically accurate. One of the most memorable visual gags in Kenan and Kel history involved a ridiculous medical examination that played on the show's central orange soda obsession. But the joke was actually much more scientifically impossible than most viewers probably realized at the time. In the episode, Who Loves Orange Soda? From the second season, Kenan and Kel visit a doctor who shows them an X-ray of Kel's torso that appears to be completely orange in color, supposedly proving that his steady diet of orange soda has literally dyed his internal organs bright orange. This visual gag was presented as medical evidence of just how much orange soda Kel had consumed over the years, with the orange-tinted X-ray serving as proof that his obsession had reached dangerous levels that were affecting his body from the inside out. The scene was played for laughs, with Kenan expressing shock at seeing his best friend's orange-colored insides, while Kel seemed relatively unconcerned about the apparently alarming medical findings that suggested his organs had been permanently stained by his favorite beverage. However, the entire premise of this joke is completely impossible from a medical and scientific standpoint, making it one of the most unrealistic moments in a show that was already pretty far from reality. Real X-rays work by showing the density and structure of bones and organs using electromagnetic radiation. But they cannot detect or display colors at all since X-ray images are created in black, white, and various shades of gray, based on how much radiation passes through different tissues. Even if X-rays could somehow show colors, which they absolutely cannot, drinking large amounts of orange soda would never actually dye a person's internal organs orange no matter how much they consumed. The artificial coloring agents used in orange soda are processed by the digestive system and filtered out by the liver and kidneys, just like any other food coloring, and they don't have the ability to permanently stain human tissue the way the show suggested. The writers and producers of Kenan and Kel were clearly more interested in creating a funny visual moment than in medical accuracy, which makes perfect sense for a comedy show aimed at kids and teenagers who weren't expected to analyze the scientific plausibility of every joke. Fact 8. The orange soda came from Florida grocery stores. Behind the scenes of one of television's most famous product placements was a surprisingly simple and unglamorous procurement process that had nothing to do with fancy Hollywood prop departments or special beverage sponsorships. When it came time to stock the Rigby's grocery store set with orange soda for Kel to consume during filming, the production team took the most straightforward approach possible and simply sent crew members to regular grocery stores in the Orlando area to buy whatever orange soda brands were available on local shelves. This down-to-earth approach to prop procurement happened because the first 2 seasons of Kenan and Kel were filmed at Nickelodeon Studios, which was located inside Universal Studios Florida in Orlando. The production team found it much easier and more cost-effective to source their orange soda locally, rather than trying to arrange special shipments or negotiate product placement deals with major beverage companies. Kel Mitchell himself confirmed this detail in interviews, explaining that the orange soda he drank during filming came directly from Florida grocery store chains that were operating in the Orlando market during the mid to late 1990s. This local sourcing strategy meant that the specific brands and types of orange soda that appeared on the show varied depending on what was available at nearby stores during different filming periods. The production team wasn't particularly concerned with maintaining consistency in terms of bottle shapes, label designs, or even exact flavors, since the focus was more on the comedy of Kel's obsession rather than promoting any particular brand of orange soda to viewers. The fact that such an iconic element of the show came from mundane grocery shopping trips highlights how much of television production relies on practical, everyday solutions rather than elaborate Hollywood magic. While fans might have assumed that the orange soda was provided by a major corporate sponsor or created specifically for the show, the reality was much more ordinary and relatable. This approach also meant that the orange soda Kel was drinking on screen was the same stuff that viewers could find in their own local grocery stores, making his character's obsession feel more authentic and accessible to the audience, who might have been inspired to try orange soda themselves after watching the show. Fact 9. Kim Fields directed episodes and got flowers. One of the most heartwarming behind-the-scenes moments in Kenan and Kel history involved a beloved television veteran, who brought both her acting talents and directing skills to the show, creating a special connection with the young stars that went far beyond typical professional relationships. Kim Fields, who was already famous for playing Tootie on The Facts of Life and Regine Hunter on Living Single, took on a dual role in the Kenan Kel universe by both directing episodes and appearing on screen as a substitute teacher character named Miss Horn. Fields brought a unique perspective to the show since she had experience working as a child actor herself and understood the challenges that young performers like Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell were facing in their careers. Her background in both comedy and drama, combined with her transition into directing, made her an ideal choice for working with the Nickelodeon production team on episodes that required both technical skill and an understanding of how to work effectively with teenage actors. When Fields appeared in her first episode as Miss Horn, the experience was so positive and her contribution so appreciated that Kenan Kel decided to honor her in a way that was both spontaneous and touching. At the end of filming her debut episode, the two stars surprised Fields by giving her something that was typically reserved for major guest stars or special occasions. Her very own curtain call moment where she could take a bow in front of the studio audience, just like Kenan Kel did at the end of every regular episode. But the tribute didn't stop there, because Kenan Kel also presented Fields with a beautiful bouquet of flowers as a gesture of appreciation for her work both in front of and behind the camera. This moment was particularly meaningful because it showed how much respect the young actors had for Fields as both a performer and a director, and it demonstrated the kind of mutual admiration that made the Kenan Kel set such a positive working environment. Fields later returned to play Miss Horn again in a fourth-season episode called The Graduates, where her character had been promoted to principal of the high school, showing that her initial appearance had been successful enough to warrant bringing her back for an even more significant role in the show's mythology. Fact 10. The show had multiple secret working titles. The iconic title that fans know and love today almost never existed, and the journey to finding the perfect name for the show involved some surprisingly generic alternatives that would have completely changed how people remembered this classic Nickelodeon series. During the early development stages, when writers and producers were trying to figure out what to call their new buddy comedy starring Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, they went through several working titles that were much more generic and less memorable than what eventually made it to air. The first working title that the creative team seriously considered was Me and My Homeboy, which was meant to capture the friendship dynamic between the two main characters while using slang that was popular during the mid-1990s. This title emphasized the buddy aspect of the show and tried to convey the casual, informal relationship between Kenan and Kel, but it lacked the personal connection that made the characters so appealing to audiences who had already fallen in love with them on all that. When Me and My Homeboy didn't feel quite right, the producers moved on to another generic option called Me and My Friend, which was even more straightforward and descriptive but somehow felt even less exciting than the first attempt. This title was supposed to be simple and easy to understand, making it clear that the show was about two friends and their adventures together, but it didn't capture any of the specific personality or energy that Kenan Kel brought to their performances. After spending time developing these alternative titles and probably conducting focus groups or internal discussions about which direction to go, the creative team eventually came to a realization that seems obvious in hindsight, but apparently took some time to reach during the actual development process. They recognized that audiences who were already familiar with Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell from their work on All That were naturally going to refer to any show starring these two performers as Kenan and Kel, regardless of what the official title actually was. This insight led the producers to abandon their generic working titles and simply embrace what fans were already calling the show, making Kenan Kel the official title that perfectly captured both the star power of the two leads and the personal connection that viewers felt with these characters. Fact 11. Rogers Airport job was oddly specific. One of the most curiously detailed aspects of the Kenan Kel universe involved the very specific career choice that the writers gave to Kenan's intimidating father Roger creating an oddly precise backstory that didn't quite match up with the show's actual production reality. Roger Rockmore was established as working as an air traffic controller at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, which is one of the busiest and most well-known airports in the United States, giving him a job that required serious responsibility, and explained why he was often stressed out and short-tempered when dealing with his son's schemes. This career detail was mentioned multiple times throughout the series and became an important part of Roger's character, helping to explain his authoritative personality and his lack of patience for the chaos that Kenan and Kel constantly created in his household. The writers clearly put thought into choosing a job that would make Roger seem like a serious, responsible adult who worked in a high-pressure environment where mistakes could have major consequences, which made perfect sense for a character who served as the stern father figure, trying to keep his mischievous teenager in line. However, there was something quite strange about this career choice when you consider the practical realities of where Kenan and Kel was actually being produced during its 4-season run on Nickelodeon. The first 2 seasons of the show were filmed entirely at Nickelodeon Studios, which was located inside Universal Studios Florida in Orlando, meaning that all the Chicago-based storylines were actually being shot hundreds of miles away from the city where Roger supposedly worked every day. When the show moved production for its final 2 seasons, the filming location shifted even further from Chicago to the Nick on Sunset Theater in Hollywood, California, putting the actual production on the complete opposite side of the country from where Roger's job was supposed to be located. This meant that throughout the entire run of the series, Roger was supposedly commuting to work at a Chicago airport, while the actor playing him was performing on sound stages in either Florida or California. The writers never addressed this geographical disconnect, and Roger's job at O'Hare Airport remained a consistent part of his character, even though it created a logistical impossibility that sharp-eyed viewers might have noticed if they thought too hard about the show's internal geography. Fact 12. Both stars auditioned for SNL together. The end of Kenan and Kel marked the beginning of a new chapter for both stars, but their journey into adult comedy took an unexpected turn that would ultimately send their careers in completely different directions. In 2003, 3 years after their Nickelodeon show had ended, both Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell decided to audition for Saturday Night Live, the legendary sketch comedy show that had been launching careers and defining American humor since 1975. This audition represented a natural next step for both performers, who had spent years perfecting their sketch comedy skills on All That, and then transitioning into sitcom work with their own show. Saturday Night Live seemed like the perfect place for them to continue developing as comedians, while reaching an adult audience that would appreciate their mature comedic sensibilities. Both Kenan and Kel had the kind of versatile performance abilities and character work experience that SNL typically looked for in new cast members. However, when the audition results came back, only Kenan Thompson received an offer to join the cast, while Kel Mitchell was not selected for the show. This outcome created an awkward situation between the longtime friends and collaborators, especially since there were rumors that their friendship had been damaged by the competitive nature of both wanting the same opportunity. Kel Mitchell later addressed these rumors directly, explaining that he wasn't bitter about Kenan's success and that he genuinely supported his friend's achievement. Kenan's selection for Saturday Night Live made him a historic figure in the show's long history, as he became the first cast member who was actually born after the show's original premiere date in 1975. Since Kenan was born in May of 1978, he represented a new generation of performers who had grown up watching SNL rather than living through its early years, bringing a different perspective to the show's comedy and cultural references. This career divergence marked the end of Kenan and Kel as a regular performing duo, with Kenan going on to become one of the longest-serving cast members in Saturday Night Live history, while Kel pursued other television and film projects. Despite the initial awkwardness surrounding the audition results, both performers have maintained their friendship and occasionally reunited for special projects over the years. Fact 13. The red curtain intros had hidden meanings. One of the most cleverly designed elements of Kenan Kel that many viewers probably never fully appreciated was the way the show's opening curtain segments functioned as a sophisticated preview system that gave observant fans subtle clues about what was going to happen in each episode. Every episode began with Kenan and Kel standing in front of a red curtain, still in character, where they would interact with the studio audience and engage in seemingly casual banter before the actual storyline began, but these moments were far more carefully planned than they appeared to be. The writers and producers used these curtain call openings as an opportunity to plant visual and verbal hints about the episode's main plot points, creating a kind of treasure hunt for viewers who paid close attention to the details of what Kenan and Kel were wearing, holding, or discussing during these pre-show moments. These hints were usually subtle enough that they didn't give away major plot twists or spoil the comedy, but they were specific enough that viewers could look back after watching the episode and realize that the clues had been there all along. One of the most memorable examples of this hidden preview system occurred in the opening of The Tainting of the Screw, an episode that centered around Kenan choking on a screw that had somehow ended up in his tuna sandwich at Rigby's grocery store. During the curtain call opening for this episode, Kel appeared wearing complete fishing gear and proudly showed off a large tuna that he had supposedly caught, creating a direct visual connection to the fish that would later cause problems for Kenan when it arrived at the store already containing a dangerous metal object. This attention to detail in the opening segments showed how much thought the creative team put into every aspect of the show's structure, using even the brief introductory moments as an opportunity to enhance the viewing experience for fans who were paying attention. The curtain call segments also served another important purpose by maintaining the fourth wall breaking element that made Kenan and Kel feel more interactive and personal than many other sitcoms, giving viewers the sense that they were getting exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the characters' thoughts and preparations before each adventure began. Fact 14. Kel had bizarre character phobias. Behind the scenes of Kenan and Kel, the writers created an incredibly detailed character Bible that contained far more information about Kel Kimball's personality quirks and background than ever made it into the actual episodes, including a surprisingly extensive list of phobias that ranged from understandable fears to completely random and bizarre anxieties that would have made for some very strange comedy if they had ever been explored on screen. These character details were developed to help the writers and Kel Mitchell understand the characters' psychology and create consistent behavior patterns, even if most of these fears never became part of the show's storylines. According to the official character documentation, Kel was supposed to be afraid of pancakes, which is already a pretty unusual fear for anyone to have, but especially strange for a character who was generally portrayed as someone who loved food and wasn't particularly picky about what he ate. The list also included butterflies, which might seem like a reasonable fear since some people do have phobias about insects and flying creatures, but it's still an oddly specific detail for a character who was usually shown as being fearless about most everyday situations. The phobias got even more peculiar from there, with the character Bible listing brassieres as one of Kel's fears, which would have created some very awkward comedy situations if it had ever been addressed in episodes involving female characters or clothing stores. Flying was another fear on the list, which is actually quite common among real people but never came up during episodes that involved travel or airplanes. And ponies were also included, suggesting that Kel had some kind of issue with small horses specifically, rather than all animals in general. Perhaps the strangest entries on Kel's fear list were crime and Berlin, which seem like completely random additions that don't fit with any of the characters' other established traits or the show's typical storylines. The inclusion of monkeys as a fear makes slightly more sense, since animal phobias are relatively common, but it still feels like an arbitrary choice that was probably never going to come up in a show that was primarily set in a grocery store and a family home in Chicago. Most of these phobias remained completely unused throughout the show's 4-season run, suggesting that the character Bible was more comprehensive than the actual scripts required. Fact 15. The final episode was actually a TV movie. The way Kenan Kel ended its 4-season run on Nickelodeon was quite different from how most television series conclude, because instead of wrapping up with a standard 24-minute episode like all the others that had come before it, the show's creators decided to give their beloved characters a much more elaborate send-off in the form of a full-length made-for-television movie. This finale was called Two Heads Are Better Than None, and it represented a significant departure from the show's usual format while providing fans with a more substantial conclusion to the series than they might have gotten with a regular episode. The decision to end the show with a TV movie rather than a standard episode allowed the writers and producers to create a more ambitious storyline that wouldn't have been possible within the constraints of their usual runtime, giving them the opportunity to explore bigger adventures and more elaborate set pieces than the grocery store and family home settings that had defined most of the series. This extended format also meant that the characters could go on a more epic journey that felt appropriately climactic for a series finale. When Two Heads Are Better Than None aired on Nickelodeon, it was presented as a special event rather than just another episode, and the movie was actually split into multiple parts that were broadcast over several days, creating a mini-series experience that kept viewers coming back to see how the story would conclude. This multi-part presentation format was unusual for Nickelodeon at the time and helped build excitement and anticipation among fans who were eager to see how their favorite characters' adventures would finally come to an end. The TV movie format allowed the production team to bring back many of the show's recurring characters and give them more substantial roles in the finale, creating a sense of closure for the entire fictional world that had been built up over 4 seasons. The movie also featured more elaborate comedy sequences and special effects than typical episodes, taking advantage of the larger budget and extended runtime to create something that felt more like a theatrical experience than a regular television show. This approach to ending the series was relatively uncommon for Nickelodeon shows of that era, making Kenan and Kel's conclusion feel special and memorable for fans who had followed the character's journey from the beginning.